Now, today we haven't got Wally Martin here. You who have been to any of these before will know that Walter Martin has been to the previous two. I was hoping to come to this one. We were hoping to get him interviewed by Channel 5, but we just couldn't quite make it happen after all. He's 99, 100th on his next birthday. The next best thing, we've got his two sons, Jonathan and Geoff here. And one of his best stories, which I was going to ask him to tell if he'd been here, I was going to ask him to tell it again. He's told it before because it's such a good story. But as he's not here, I'm going to ask one of his sons to tell it instead. So, who's telling it?
It always seems to me when I come to these reunions that if the rest of their subsequent lives was like a black and white silent film, the 6 months they spent in Arizona was a glorious technicolor with full orchestral accompaniment. The times, the experiences they had, seeing all those universities have been the story of their lives ever afterwards. Well, Dad is, as Catherine says, Dad's 99 now, and he had just as many experiences out there as everybody else did. Going out on the Queen Mary was one of them, and I've been on the Queen Mary with him. He tells me how there were 15,000 soldiers on there in a crossing, and it was full. You know, the decks were completely full of bodies. And when we were on there was virtually no one else, and it's just like a dozen cricket pitches of decking. Amazing sight. Dad did have a second bite at the cherry because many years after the war, he and my mother went out to live there in the winters for 5 years. They had a house there, and he had kept in touch with his old flying instructor, Fred Merhart, who became a dear friend. And I think that was the case with many of the cadets, actually. The instructors they had were pretty important people in their lives, and they were very fond of them. And Dad had this place out there. They went out for the winters, had a wonderful time. I went out there once as well, and it was just wonderful, really. I could quite understand why cadets loved being out there so much. Everything was just like it isn't here, really. Wonderful weather, great food, wonderful songs. Anyway, long story short, the incident that Catherine is referring to, when Dad qualified and got his wings and came back to England, obviously the Battle of Britain was well and truly over, and the RAF didn't really need fighter pilots any longer, and of course even the bombing was coming to an end. But they did need people to fly gliders, and that's what Dad did. He flew a glider in Operation Varsity, one of the Rhine landings. And that was a pretty scary experience because the gliders, of course, went where they were towed, and once they cast off, they circled around. They had a landing spot which they had to find and then land. And of course, a lot of them didn't make it. They were shot out of the sky, or they were, when they landed, they had a bad landing and people died in those circumstances. But Dad managed to find his landing zone. He landed, and everybody got out all right, and that was good. But on the way down, of course, they did get shot up. And during the flight, Dad had put a packet of cigarettes down next to him. And when he got up, when the plane landed, when he picked this cigarette packet up, sweet caporals they were, he still got it. There was a bullet hole through the centre of it. And he likes to remind me of this, that bullet had been another 6 inches to one side, I wouldn't have been here today. So there it is, a little story. He would love to have been with us today, by the way. And he's still, pretty energetic, but he has to be careful, like any 99-year-old does, about how he spends his energy, but he does wish everyone here every blessing. And thank you for being here. Thank you too, may I say, to add my thanks to Catherine for all the work you do. It's wonderful, really. You know, these things can only happen if people make them happen, can't they? There has to be somebody or some few people who are prepared to go to all the trouble and the work of making them happen. And it's wonderful that we've got people like that. Thank you, Catherine.
Well, we are a team.